The Pursuit custom dice is one of the stronger dice in the game and has a pretty interesting passive that opens up a number of strong playstyles, which I'll be demonstrating in this video. Its initial effect expands the first and third plane, making it the same size as plane 2. So this brings your total possible movements from 7 in plane 1 and 4 in plane 2 to 11 in both. So this means that we go from a maximum of 22 possible moves to 33 moves, which lets us land on way more domains along the way. The reason for this expansion, however, is because the passive incentivizes you to change up how you would move. The custom dice gives you a stack of path boost every time you move to a non-adjacent domain, but in order to help you do this, it lets you jump to any domain on the map that is the same type as the one that you're currently standing on. Theoretically, this doesn't change a thing if you have amazing luck. You can still zigzag to maximize your movements, but each zigzag needs to be on a non-adjacent domain. Realistically though, this isn't going to happen, which is why the game makes up for it by expanding plane 1 and 2. So let's look at our die faces. Because we're able to jump to the same face that we're standing on, we want to pick one type of face and duplicate it as many times as possible to give ourselves a good path. So we run with the gold die face general inspiration to copy one domain onto 2 random locations. We've got general vandalism in our loadout, as typically we won't be focusing on combat, so it's nice to have this in our arsenal to get some free blessings along the way by using it on unused combat and elite domains. We then have general diffusion because we want to be jumping to domains that can house beacons such as occurrences, abnormal occurrences, and rewards. So this face can only ever be used once per plane, and then it essentially turns your die into a 5-sided die, so that's always welcomed. Domain self lets you copy your current domain onto a location of your choice. So this is pretty much the best face in this loadout for our game plan, as it lets you have full control over where you want to move next, allowing you to maximize your path boost stacks. Then we've got general attention, which is similar to diffusion but can only occur on occurrences, abnormal occurrences, and rewards, so it's arguably better. And then finally we've got general counteract, which lets us copy one domain onto a random adjacent location. So this one isn't really that great as it applies it to an adjacent location, meaning that you can't get a path boost stack from it in most situations, but it can be useful in situations where you can use it on a domain that wouldn't have normally given you a stack to essentially shift it one spot to allow you to jump to it. Okie dokie, let's kick off the run. So this time I actually wanted to showcase the double Ruan Meis strat, since it's actually really easy to land this with this particular custom dice due to the expanded plane 1 and plane 3. So I did say last time that I was going to try to play some teams that didn't run for Ruan, so I'm going to take the easy way out of this and run a remembrance team this time so that we're able to keep enemies locked down using freeze, since you don't need to actually care about damage absorption when enemies don't get a chance to do any damage. So for those who don't know, the way that the double Ruan Meis strat works is that occurrences and abnormal occurrences have a set pool of possible events that can happen when you step into one. And almost every single one of these events only happen once per run, which means that once you experience it, it won't show up again. So as you go through and experience all the occurrence events, you eventually whittle the pool down to a point where the only possible options left to show up is going to be Ruan Meis Part 1 and Part 2. The idea here is that abnormal occurrences have a smaller pool than compared to regular occurrences. So we want to be duplicating as many double abnormal occurrences as we can so that we can exhaust the pool faster. The Pursuit dice has an expanded plane 1 and plane 3, so we've got a fairly good chance of picking up both Ruan Meis right around the end of plane 2 if we do it right. So for the remembrance build itself, we're going to be running a team of Jingliu, Pella, Ruan Mei, and Hua, and I'll eventually swap Jingliu out for March 7th later on once we get our build up and running. But the idea here is that we want to pick up all the disassociation blessings to absolutely blow up bosses. Dissociation is just so powerful since the damage it deals scales off enemies' max health, which means that you're always going to be dealing a significant amount of damage regardless of how geared your team is. The debuff causes enemies to take ice damage equal to 30% of their max health after they unfreeze. The downside of the build is that it is very blessing dependent, so unless we get the blessings that we need, we're just not going to be able to trigger the combo, which is why I'm going to be starting the build off with Jingliu first, since she'll just be able to hard carry the run while we look for these blessings. If you're watching this, it's fine for you to run with whatever carry you want, it doesn't really necessarily need to be Jingliu. The breakpoint of this build is going to be once we get these two blessings. So first we want the 3-star blessing, Perfect Experience Full Eye. This lets us apply dissociation when we attack a frozen enemy. So you need to freeze the enemy first and then attack them in order to apply it. And then we want Ultimate Experience Melancholia. So this is attacking an enemy with dissociation will remove the debuff and deal damage equal to 200% of dissociation removal damage. So rather than waiting for the freeze to wear off in order for the damage to trigger, we can force the damage to trigger by attacking, and not only that, its damage is ramped up significantly. So these are the two core blessings, but there are a whole bunch of other blessings that you'll need to build around these two to really get the most out of this build. Alright, so some honorable mentions here are going to be the ultimate experience in sensitivity, which has a 75% chance to freeze enemies again after dissociation is removed. So this is going to keep enemies frozen, allowing you to reapply the debuff again and again and again. And so in order for all of this to even happen, you're going to need to be able to freeze enemies in the first place. So perfect experience reticence is going to be really good. It lets you freeze enemies after hitting them 5 times. And then obviously your path resonance applies freeze, so stacking as many remembrance blessings as possible is going to be really useful, as it's going to let you get all the resonance upgrades, and that's going to be really helpful for our run. Okay, enough explaining the build. So let's take a look to see how the run's going so far, and let's talk some decision making. Okay, so we've landed on 3 abnormal occurrences so far, clearing out 3 possible events out of a total pool of 20. In plane 1, we're just going to be focusing on hitting as many abnormals as we can, and building path boost stacks comes secondary to that. So the good thing about the pursuit dice is that it gives quite a bit of bonuses for each stack compared to other dice. Just as an example here, for the remembrance path, pursuit gives us 72% hit per stack, which is double the amount that you would get from something like Trotter extrapolation, which gives 36% a stack, or 4 times as much as company time, which only gives 18% per stack. So this means that while it would be nice if we could jump every move to build stacks, we really don't need to land the bonus every single time, and landing it about 3 or 4 times in plane 1 should still be okay. In terms of blessings, I was lucky enough to pick up Full Eye just now, allowing me to apply Dissociation on hitting frozen enemies, and also Reticence, which applies freeze on attacks. So now I just need to find Melancholia to finish off the combo, allowing me to swap in March. And so knowing this, when I entered this particular occurrence here, the Beast Horde, it gave me an option to fight a harder elite to get a 3-star blessing and 1 courier, or an easier elite for a 2-star blessing. So because we already have all the 3-star blessings that we need for the combo, the right choice here is to pick the easier fight for a 2-star blessing, as we want to target farm for Melancholia. And then, as if this was all just scripted, there it is. Okay, so now that we have our core blessings, it's now just a matter of racking up more abnormal occurrences while we continue to pick up more remembrance blessings to further strengthen our build. We won't be able to swap in March until we hit either an adventure domain or a respite after we beat the boss, but that's okay, as Jingliu will still do fine here. I'll skip through the occurrences a little bit to speed things up, but what I do here is I keep a mental note of how many abnormal occurrences events that I've cleared out. So within the pool of 20, there is the cheating code part 1 and 2, which are infinitely repeatable, so I don't count those when I encounter it. When you do encounter a cheating code part 1, it's best to either avoid it if possible, or if you have to pick it, simply choose the first option to take the 100 fragments, since if you pick any other option, the game will force part 2 on you on your next abnormal occurrence. So we can see here that I'm about to step into the plane 1 boss, and I've only managed to get myself 2 stacks of path boost. But even then, that's still 142% hit, which is still plenty for the first boss. So let's just have a look and see how fast this boss melts thanks to our combo. So we can see here that we open with a 740k break thanks to Ruan Mei, and the boss starts to fight frozen, which is great. This lets Huahua perform a basic attack, which then applies Dissociation thanks to the Full Eye buff, and then thanks to Melancholia, Ruan Mei's basic attack pops the debuff, dealing 360k damage just like that. Then we can see the combo in action once again. Jingliu's skill applies the freeze, her follow-up special attack then hits the frozen enemy, and now Pella comes along and once again pops it for 430k. So there we have it, super easy fight. So you can see now how this damage will start to ramp up as we start to fight harder enemies with more health. So now that we're in plane 2, we've cleared out a total of 9 abnormal occurrences in plane 1. With a total pool of 20, we can minus 2 for the cheating code and another 2 for both Ruan Meis. That's just 16 occurrences that we need to clear out, and we've already done 9. So it shouldn't be too long now. We can expect to run into our first Ruan Mei after clearing another 7 in plane 2, which shouldn't take too long if we're able to get lucky with double occurrences. So we can see here that I'm just still picking up more remembrance blessings as we go along. This one in particular is really good and was one of our honorable mentions, ultimate experience in sensitivity. This was the one that has the chance of reapplying freeze on enemies after dissociation is removed from them. Oh, and one thing that I wanted to make a note of is that when you're going through and marking off occurrences, you might notice that you keep on running into the nudist event, but this event is actually 3 versions, even though it always goes by the same name of nudist. When you actually read through the text for this encounter, it's different each time, with it either being about a lightfish, a robot, or a wild boar. So don't worry too much about it, you're still clearing out the pool when you encounter the nudist event. So let's see how we're doing in plane 2, and honestly, pretty bad luck, not a single double abnormal on the map. We did get pretty lucky with blessings though, so I'm not going to complain, but we've only done another 3 abnormals in plane 2, which brings our total up to 12. We are now at a point where we've got enough abnormals on the map, which means I'm able to start doing some bigger jumps to bring our hit rate stacks up. You do want to end around 300 to 400% hit rate by the end of plane 2. And bam, there it is. We got a slightly early Ranmei jump scare, getting her in a 1 in 7 pool. So not too bad, but unfortunately for us, we did get part 2 first. Ideally, we do want to get part 1 first, as that gives us every blessing in a random path, which would then mean that part 2 would upgrade everything for us. But it's not such a big deal. We've already scored all of our most important blessings, and they're the ones that will be upgraded thanks to Ranmei too. So I'm also running the character Ranmei, which means that I do get all the other options as well. So that's also 10 random curios and 10 cheats, so that's extra nice. Now that we've gotten one of the Ranmeis, it shouldn't be too much longer now before we land the other, so we're just going to continue doing what we've been doing until we find it. And there we go. Just as expected, we got our second Ranmei 2 moves later. So this time around, she's decided to give me every blessing within the Path of Nihility, which really isn't that useful, but there are a couple of blessings there that can be fairly useful, so it's whatever. We also get the other bonus too, which is 2000 Cosmic Fragments, which should come in handy for upgrading any blessings that we didn't manage to upgrade earlier, so that's pretty great. Okay, so let's do a status update now. We're approaching the Plane 2 boss. I've got pretty unlucky with the placement in all honesty, so we only end up with 288% hit rate, so not within the 300 to 400 that I was originally aiming for, but that's okay. We've got our 2 Ranmeis, so now in Plane 3 we'll be focusing on stacking our hit rate. Remember, Plane 3 is expanded, so it's going to be just as big as Plane 2 here, so we're going to have plenty of chances to rack up those stacks. Meanwhile, let's see how we do against the Plane 2 boss. So we open the fight with a whopping 1 million damage from the opening break, and our goal is exactly the same. We want to apply freeze, we want to hit the D while it's frozen to apply the debuff, and then hit it once again to pop it. We can see here that with a larger health pool, our disassociation pops are now dealing over 500,000 damage. We want to make sure that we keep everything frozen as best we can, since we're going to be taking a lot of damage if we do get hit. You also notice that I now have March 7 on the team. I did swap her in around the start of Plane 2. The reason for this is because applying freeze is going to be the #1 most important thing that we do from now on, and March excels at this with her map-wide freeze. Our main sources for freezing are going to be March's ultimate, Pella's ultimate, and the Path Resident, so we want to make sure that at least one of these abilities is up at all times in order to refresh the freeze. So I'll leave the rest of the fight to play out here. You'll see how I just keep on rotating the freezes to keep the D locked down, making for quite an easy fight overall.
Tryhards, watch this awesome move! You can't run! Gotta try hard, so watch this awesome move! Protect me! Protect me!
Fiends or devils, I'll crush them all!
Every petal, all will be swept away by the wind.
Enemy data signet markers activated. Time for a good old counterattack. Net markers activated. Time for a good old counterattack.
Alrighty, now with that we're done with Plane 2 and we're heading into Plane 3. Now that we've already landed our Ranmeis, we no longer need to actively target abnormal occurrences, so the aim now is to do 2 things. Firstly, we want to do as many big jumps as we can to stack path boost bonuses in Plane 3, with the goal of getting at least 600% hit rate in order to consistently freeze the last boss. And while we do this, we want to get the most high value domains in order to increase the maximum amount of blessings that we end up with. So reward domains are normally a decent option for getting more 3-star blessings, but in our case we've already got most of the 3-star blessings that we need, so it's actually better to duplicate intracognition domains. In Plane 3, intracognition domains will always spawn with the Genius Society event, which gives you 1 blessing, 1 curio, and 50 fragments, so it's going to be the most consistent thing to jump to. Because we've got 10 cheats from Ranmei Part 2, it should be pretty easy to use some back-to-back inspiration die rolls to duplicate these randomly across the map. If your spread is not looking good, you can instead land on an intracognition domain and then use the domain self die face, which lets you duplicate the current domain to a location of your choosing. When choosing where to place your domain, just make sure that it's at least one space away from your current location and that it's also in a spot that allows you to zigzag as much as possible in order to maximize your stacks. If you do however get lucky with your pathing and you've already got a nice path to maximize your stack gain, you can instead opt to use the general vandalism die face to blow up combat tiles for even more bonus blessings. So all in all, I ended playing 3 with just over 600% hit rate. Along the way we hit 6 intracognition domains for 6 blessings, 6 couriers and 300 fragments. Not too shabby. So in terms of the final blessings, we end up with just over 60 blessings and 5,000 fragments that we can now use to upgrade them. For the final boss, I choose to go with the Swarm. The strategy here isn't too different from what we already spoke about in Plane 2, so I'm not going to go over it again. I did however have an unfortunate issue with my recording software which caused it to stop around the end of the second phase, so unfortunately I'll have to cut the footage short here. I will have my full team's footage for you to see at the end of the video and you can jump to it now using the chapter buttons. So hopefully this was useful. I did always want to showcase the Ruan Meis strat at least once during my videos, so this was a good opportunity. The build is quite powerful if you manage to get the right blessings, so hopefully you guys have some luck with it. See ya!
Enemy data net markers activated. Time for a good old counterattack.
Existence is unity.
Enemy data net markers activated. Time for a good old counterattack.
Every petal, all will be swept away by the wind. Every petal, all will be swept away by the wind.
Enjoying yourself? My turn! Try that again! You can't run! Gotta try hard to watch this awesome move! Try that again! Gotta try hard to watch this awesome move! I'm scared! Stop it!
These are devils. I'll crush them all.
Enemy data secure. Net markers activated. Time for a good old counterattack.
These are devils. I'll crush them all.
You're annoying. Enemy data secure. Net markers activated. Time for a good old counterattack.
Let's continue.
I'm gonna hold everyone back again. Protect me. Protect me. Here. Gotta try hard to watch this awesome move.